very, very nervous because I've never gone public about my health issues. Like, I've shared them within my small circle, within our Bible study group, within like people that are closest to us, but and like different people that I've worked with, like certain coworkers that I sell on a consistent basis. But like people back home, especially in Hamilton County, don't know what I'm going through, mainly because I got off social media about a year and a half ago. I was going through different transitions in just me finding my purpose, me knowing what I wanted to do in life, and most importantly, hear from God. And I felt like social media was going to be the best way to get off of, to hear God better. And so I got off social media, and so for the last year and a half I've been silent in even any successes, but also with the failures that I've experienced and the challenges that I've experienced. And so I figured, after going through this over a year now, last April when things started changing in our life and in our family, I figured like now is a beautiful and perfect time to start to be open about what I'm going through, and not to I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I think that was the biggest struggle that I had, why I didn't share my story openly with people, because growing up, actually I'm gonna let my sister tell you a little bit about what our life was like growing up.
Yeah, so basically like life was normal. I guess for normal you can talk about like, you know, what a typical family looks like, right? So you have both parents in your life, and you know, you're just basically like living. But at the age of 10, our mother walked out of our lives, and my dad became a single father, and so we basically from that point on ended up growing up in a single parent home, low income background. So we struggled a lot financially. And if you know anything, if you yourself have gone through that, or if you've done research before, like, you know, the stresses that cause from that, like that come from it. So being raised in a single parent home or low income background, it causes a lot of stress on a child. And just even working with the students that I get to work with now, like, you get to see the trauma that students experience. And the reason why I talk about trauma is because in a sense, like, fibromyalgia can root from trauma, correct? And so since this whole journey, like, we've healed from what we've been through. So like, of course, like, after our faith is in Jesus Christ, so it was then that we were set free, if you will, from a lot of different things, and we were healed from a lot of brokenness. And so now, even though we don't necessarily have a relationship with our mother, we can still talk to her whenever she calls us. Every so often we can say like, hey, like I, I will still contact you, or I will still talk to you. Whereas before it used to be, I don't want anything to do with you. So, anybody who grows up in certain situations that has to do with a lot of stress and deals with a lot of trauma, there's a lot of healing that has to come through that. And I think one of the things that about like our close relationship is that a lot of people say that we're super close, and yes, I would consider Jose one of my bestest friends. And the reason for that is because we've experienced a lot growing up, and there was many times that we experienced certain things and we were both there and nobody else was. Simply things as going to court, and then like just growing up in that like poverty home environment. There's a lot of things that other people don't necessarily experience unless they're going through that. So not sure if you're going to, I mean, thankfully we were blessed with food, but it wasn't what somebody would expect. So it was constantly rice and beans, or beans and eggs and tortillas, and that was it. So for us to eat something like, glorious wasn't something that we got to experience quite often. And so there's a lot of things that we experienced together, and because of that, it united us. And to this day, like, we're still close and we understand each other because we know how to read each other and know when somebody is going through something, whether that is like they're upset, they're stressed, they're mad, or they're dealing with something. So and I think like even now with what you're experiencing, I can tell whenever you're not okay. And even though, like, before I knew when you were not okay, like, now I know, like, oh, like, it's not just you're going through something mentally, but it's like you're going through something physically as well now. So that adds something else to it. And so that's kind of like our background. I know I kind of stretched it out a little bit. And I don't want to go into too much like details because we don't have enough time. But
yeah, that was beautiful. And so I asked you to share a little bit about where we're, like, a little bit about our background and everything, because part of our mom walking out of our lives, I was 11 and she was 10. We grew up in a household where what happens at home stays at home. But also, when you leave the house, you put on a smile on your face no matter what. And so we grew up, like, kind of wearing a mask for, like, years, you know. We didn't want, because for so long people were feeling sorry for us. When they would see us, they're like, oh my gosh. In our small town, the word gets around everywhere. People would say, oh my gosh, poor kids, like, I'm so sorry for them. Instead of people hugging us. All we wanted was a hug.
Or asking how we were doing.
Like, our mom walked out of our lives, but instead people were more like feeling sorry and trying to love us from a distance, when in reality we needed them to love us up close. And so throughout all of that, it kind of led me into college, having trust issues. Like, I never really had best friends in college because I felt like every single person that I'm going to get close to is going to walk away just like my mom did. And so that was like my mentality. I was afraid to get close to anybody and be vulnerable and transparent. And then, as my sister mentioned, faith is really big to us. And so we understand that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so I don't mind sharing my testimony about my mom and everything, but that's because I have a UF degree now. I have a stable job. We're financially stable. Like, you know, there was victory. So now I can share everything. But I'm not used to sharing or being vulnerable in the midst of a challenge. You know, I can share my whole story after I've overcame a challenge. And so for us, sorry if the AC is loud. For us, or for me, whenever I got last year, April of 2019, I started dealing with pain, and I started I was tired all the time. Like, January through April, I just started feeling so exhausted, and I thought maybe it was just my job, or maybe I needed an extra hour of sleep. But it was just like nothing was ever refueling me. And so I'm the guy that hated going to the doctor. Like, we grew up on Medicaid, so my dad, every time we had a cough, he would send us to the doctor because he's like, you have free insurance, so you're gonna go to the doctor. But once I came to college, I was like, I'm grown, like, it's just a cold, I'm gonna do this. So same with this, I was tired. I was like, let me just take control of my health issues. Let me just sleep a little bit longer. Oh my gosh.
But I'm going to stop you there real quick because I also want you to talk about what you were doing during that time. Like, you were still working
full-time, 40 hours a week. I was working with the school district, and I was just helping students. I had 120 students on my caseload, and that job was quite stressful. I had deadlines. I had students that were literally going through trauma themselves. They would come into my office crying, and my whole job was just to focus on them academically. That was it. They had their own school counselor, their own mental health specialist at the schools and everything, but for some reason these kids kept coming to me, and I would come home burdened, bringing those burdens home, and at times in tears, because I was like, I don't know what else to do. These kids would call me in the middle of the night, email me in the middle of the night, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like
dealing with poverty, homelessness, and you know, just these are at-risk youth who are in our own backyard, in our own community, and to this day they still live that way. So you understand them.
And so my dad taught us to always love and serve people 24/7. Like, I watched my dad pour out of an empty cup. So I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I thought that was what a healthy person did, poured out of an empty cup. And I watched my dad give his last and do all of this. And so when these kids would come to me with trauma issues, I grew. It was like a blessing and a curse to have a heart that just wants to serve, because then I put myself to the side. I felt like these kids' problems were a lot more worse than mine was. So yes, I'm in pain, but these kids are even in more pain. So let me put my pain to the side. And I did that for weeks. And then my sister and I went out of town to Chicago for the very first time. We had, being first generation college students, First Generation Americans, we had never really been on a plane before. So at 22 years old, we flew out to Chicago for the first time in our lives. Never experienced cold that way. And we spent 4 days. It was amazing. It was beautiful. It was refreshing. Exactly what we needed. And the day we landed back in Jacksonville at the airport. My body was just so sore, but I had just quit working out like 2 weeks before because I was doing a lot of boxing. Fun fact about me, I had gotten into boxing last January, and I had a cyst on my wrist. So I was looking online, Googling everything, and they were like, just take a break. Took a break, and while I was in Chicago, the cyst went away. And so I was like, okay, I can work out again. But I was just so sore, and I couldn't think why I was sore. And so 2 weeks later, I'm still sore. 3 weeks later, I'm sore. And my legs just hurt. There were days where I couldn't even walk to the grocery store. Like, everything just hurt. And I was just like, what is wrong? So I finally went to the doctor. And this is where everything starts to unfold. So I went to the doctor, and my doctor's like, oh, okay, just take more ibuprofen. All your blood. So I took some blood tests, and all the blood results came out good. He's like, just take ibuprofen. Come back in 2 weeks and let's see how you're doing. Came back in 2 weeks, he increased my ibuprofen. So it was no longer like over the counter stuff. Like I had to get a prescription because the pain was unbearable. And then from there, he tested me for it because I started, like I was telling him, I was tired all the time. I was in pain now. I was losing weight. Like I was losing a lot of weight quickly, like out of nowhere. And I wasn't hungry and any of that. And so then the doctor said, I'm gonna test your thyroid. Maybe you have thyroid issues. So let's test that. Thyroid results came back normal. He's like, there's nothing wrong with you. And I was like, okay, maybe he's right. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe I'm not tired. I need to change my vocabulary. And I did have friends in that time that was telling me like, hey, change your vocabulary. And I believed them. I was like, maybe it is just me. It's all in my head. I just need to take a quick break or whatever. And so the doctor's results came back normal, and I decided to take matters into my own hand. I said, maybe my legs are hurting. Let me set up an appointment with the orthopedic. Maybe there's something wrong with my bones. No one referred me there. Made an appointment with the orthopedic, and ended up being able to went to the orthopedic and got an appointment, and they checked me. They're like, what you're going through is muscle pain. It's not like bone pain. You know, we only specialize in bones. So I had to pay the consultation on my own because no doctor referred me. And at that time I had insurance, but it was through my job. And so I paid out of pocket like $200, and I was just like, man, I have to pay out of pocket, but that's fine. At least I know there's nothing wrong with my bones. And so went back to my primary care physician. I was just like, hey, there's something wrong with me. So he ran more tests, and he tested me for lupus. He tested me for rheumatoid arthritis. He tested me for Lyme's disease because maybe I had a tick on me while I was in Chicago or something. Like he tested me for all of these different chronic illnesses and autoimmune diseases, tested all the vitamin deficiencies, and things still came out normal. And so he sent me to a pain specialist who her and he were able to come together and agree that it's fibromyalgia. And so while I was doing my own research, I already kind of knew it was fibromyalgia, but from the research that I had learned and understood, it's one of the hardest illnesses to really diagnose because it's newer and there's still no cure for it. Like doctors are still trying to figure it out. And so after I was diagnosed with all of that, the doctor both of them ended up giving me Lyrica. So they said Lyrica was the only form of medicine that is FDA approved to take. And it was, he started me off at 70 milligrams, and he said, in 2 weeks, I need you to go to 150 milligrams. And then in 2 weeks, I need you to go to 300 milligrams, and then up to 600 milligrams. And I said, I don't know much about medicine. I was a pre-med major when I came to UF thinking I was going to become a doctor. And everything changed once I realized that wasn't my passion. It was more my dad's passion. and I didn't know much about medicine, but I was like, I don't know if I want to take 600 grams of Lyrica for the rest of my life, because this is what the doctor's telling me. There's no cure, and the more you get pain, the more we're going to just increase your pain medicine. And so thankfully I have awesome friends in my life that study, or not study, but just they eat healthy. They taught me the art of using food as medicine. And I was just like, what? And y'all, within the moment of me releasing or letting go of different foods that cause inflammation in the body, like inflammation in the body, within doing all of that, I ended up within 2 weeks just seeing less pain. I ended up being able to kind of walk again, but I still didn't have answers. And so I had to, what up, Sheena? After the pain meds, I was just like, they were making me even more tired. And so when I went back to the doctor, after they diagnosed me with fibromyalgia, they're like, you also have chronic fatigue syndrome. And I was just like, whoa, like, this is crazy. And so I knew the medicine route wasn't going to work for me, because I just didn't feel right. So I ended up going to do acupuncture. So I saw a lot of good things at acupuncture. And I read the lady's story before I went to her office. And she had MS for 7 years. And she was able to go from not being able to walk a block to running a 5K. And her story just really inspired me, because I was desperate for answers, y'all. Like, I was literally... We're sitting in our living room, and I sat in that couch right over there in pain every single night, and to the point where I would just cry myself to sleep, because I had pills in my cabinet in my kitchen over there, but I just didn't want to take the pain medication. I'd rather just go through it. And my sister, what was that whole process like for you, the beginning stages?
I mean, definitely it was difficult, because so at the beginning we don't know what it is. We just know that there's pain, but there's no answer. So that whole, I believe it was a whole month or 2 months? 2 months of not having any exact answers. It was just kind of like, it could be anything at this point. And so when we finally got answers, and then you were asked to be on the medicine and you chose not to be on the medicine, like, obviously that was your choice, and I wasn't going to make that choice for you. But no matter what, I was going to support you on your choice. And so you chose not to take the medicine, but even then, watching you in pain was difficult. So Jose mentioned earlier that there was times where he couldn't walk. And that was hard to see, because coming back from Chicago, where we literally rode a 6-mile bike ride, to you not being able to walk basically 2 weeks later, like not even get off the car. It was that difficult. So going grocery shopping by myself and doing it by myself, like, I didn't mind it, but it was different how the transition happened so quickly, in just within 2 weeks. And then coming home from work and seeing you just like basically in pain and crying, like, that was hard. It was difficult. It was really, really hard.
And in the midst of all of this, I was still working. So the days were long, working 40-hour work weeks with the school district and these kids needing your energy. Like, I tried to fake it till I make it. That was like my everyday motto. And then in the midst of all of that, the environment got a little bit toxic. Not a little bit, I'm actually sugarcoating it. It was quite toxic, and I had to leave in the midst of all of that. So I'm going through health issues. My environment got toxic, and how do I leave this job in the middle of health issues? Because my job has my health insurance. Like, they're helping cover my health insurance. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay all of these bills? Because it seemed like I was in the doctor's office every single week. If I wasn't getting acupuncture, I was in my primary care. If I was in my primary care, I was getting an MRI, or I was getting blood tests done. And then finally things started to make sense. That rooted to where I am today. And so, as I mentioned, I started going to acupuncture, and then kind of pursuing more of a Chinese medicine, holistic health route. And my doctors were able to kind of help me understand why I am where I am today. And so if you missed the beginning, my sister was able to share a little bit of our story at the beginning. And I say that because it's important for you to know that patients with fibromyalgia, 50% of the pain that we experience is physical. is inflammation in the body. Your muscles are aching, and then the other 50% is mental. And so, which is why I had to do an MRI. The MRI came out normal, but when I say mental, it's because of childhood trauma that kind of led to where you are today. And so the trauma that we experienced growing up was a piece of why my body started to kind of attack itself, and it was no, like I said, I was pouring out of an empty cup, and I was no longer taking care of me, and my body had to protect itself. That it got to the point where it was just starting to attack itself, and I started experiencing muscle pain, started having fatigue, and then my doctor was then able to explain that I had a blood deficiency, so my body, because I was getting dizzy. Like, I was going for runs, I was trying to work out, I was trying to do all of these things, I was getting dizzy. And so this blood deficiency, my doctor was saying that your body isn't producing enough blood fast enough. And so all of these things started to come up, and it just started to get so overwhelming that I didn't know what to do or how to explain it to my dad. So my dad being a single parent father, and me being the oldest, I always had this like unspoken pressure of, I have to make it to get my family out of poverty. Like, I was responsible to help my family. And here I am where now I can't do anything. And I just quit my job, and I was just stressed about that. And my dad, like, I didn't want him to worry. You know, he took care of us by himself for the last 12 years, that I didn't want him to, you know, put pressure on himself to try to take care of me again, you know. And so that was hard mentally, because I started to lose friends. And at first I was bitter when I was losing friends, but I came to a conclusion that they just didn't know how to help me cope or how to even respond to what I was going through in those seasons. And I'm actually working on a letter to my friends that I'm going to post on my website at mykeepingon.org, where I just talk about why I'm vulnerable and transparent, and just talk about what I wish they would have done, but then also talk about, like, I get them, because I probably would have done the same. One of my friends had an illness that I've never experienced, and I see him in pain every time I come to his house. Like you know, it's best to just love from a distance and give him a space and things like that. But I think the hardest part for me was just seeing my dad. We used to go visit him all the time throughout college and undergrad, and every time we left the house, he's like, all right, see y'all soon. Like, he was always happy that we came by and visit him and everything. But this time, after everything, I was diagnosed, because we didn't go home for like 3 months, because I was always going to the doctor. I never had energy to drive an hour and a half back home. So when we finally went and saw him, he saw how much weight I had lost. And the whole time I was like, Dad, I'm okay. And, but I wasn't. Like, I was in pain. My sister knew that, but it was one of those things. It's like, we're going to hang out with my dad for 3 hours, and we're not going to bring this up as much. We're just, because I kind of kept him updated on the phone, but on the phone, I was able to lie to my dad. Like, he didn't know that while he was talking to me, I had just got done crying myself to sleep, or I had just woke up from a nap. Like, he didn't know any of that. So when he's like, hey, how are you feeling? I'm like, I'm good, Dad. But when he saw me in person and I left and we drove off in that driveway, just his whole face of like I felt like I was like 8 years old again, and all my dad wanted to do was for his baby boy to feel better. And I said I wasn't going to cry, but this is such an emotional topic, because like, I just, it was hard. Like, he had worked so hard for my family and I, and now me, who was supposed to help our family get out of poverty and all of this, is now like incapable. And all the stories I was reading online about people with chronic illnesses was tough, because a lot of them did have to quit their jobs. A lot of them had to, you know, their lives changed forever. But like, for us, like, my family was depending on me, and now I can't do anything. So like, you know, so what would you add to that?
As far as like daddy
Yeah.
and stuff, so I would say, yeah, it's always difficult, especially like when he would call me and ask how you're doing. I would have to basically try to explain to him. But it just, I don't know. it's hard to explain it, and like Sheena said, like it's hard to explain whenever you don't know how to explain it to yourself. Like that is so true, because you're there in the moment, right?
I'm gonna go get
okay. So I think those were the most difficult parts as far as dealing with all of this, and explaining it to your family who doesn't even know English, right? So trying to explain that in Spanish too is another different thing when it comes to medical terms, and explaining what fibromyalgia is, right? A lot of people don't know what it is, so then trying to say it in Spanish is like, whoa, like, okay, maybe I need to learn more Spanish or more medical terms in Spanish to be able to explain what this is.
Yeah, definitely. So fast forward, so those were like the first 5 months. Like they were just hard. Like I said, friends had to love me from a distance because they didn't know how to be there. My dad was trying to do the best he can to be present, but I think in that moment I pushed him away a little bit, because for me, I thought I was protecting him. It's like, I don't want him to see me in this vulnerable state. And I couldn't hide from my sister. She would come home and she would just see me there. So she definitely saw those moments where there was nights where she would just sit there and cry with me because she didn't know what else to say. She couldn't take the pain away. So now, what is life like now? So, again, like having chronic illness and autoimmune disease, if you're not educated and you just rely on Western medicine, this is no shade to Western medicine at all. But it's like, you have to do your research on yourself, because if you just depend on doctors to heal you, it's going to take a while. And an example is, so I last saw my rheumatologist here at UF Shands back in November. He made an appointment for me to see him this August. So he was going to give me a year. I was supposed to go see a psychologist, do a sleep analysis because of the chronic fatigue and the insomnia and all this other stuff that I experienced with fibromyalgia. But and all of these things, and just continue taking the medicine that he prescribed me with. And I was supposed to go see him August 15th of this year. August 15th, in like 2-3 months. They called me like 2 weeks ago, and they were like, hey, the doctor had something come up and he needs to reschedule your appointment. Y'all, I cannot go see my rheumatologist until January 21st, 2 p.m. of 2021. So you tell me I have to go through the rest of this year in pain still, and just rely on medicine, and just call him when I need an increase in dosage. And I couldn't do that. And so life now looks totally different for us. We call it the new normal. So we had to remove a lot of things out of our diet. Us Mexicans love to eat, but the biggest causes of what was causing most pain was in the food that I was eating. So we love to put no ribs on the grill, but red meats, I can't have that. That causes my body to flare up. Even when it came to vegetables, like we love tomatoes and peppers and everything. Those are called nightshade vegetables, which also cause inflammation in your body. I love French fries. Potatoes cause inflammation in your body. So we had to switch a lot of our diet to more white meats, more greens, and like sweet potato. And so it was fun though. We learned how to make sweet potato waffles, sweet potato, like mashed sweet potato, and all of these things, and we've been getting creative now. And so I went from experiencing pain 6 out of 7 days a week to now like once every 2 weeks. And like it's been such a huge journey. Physically, like I'm in a much better place than where I was now. There's still no cure to what I'm going through. I'm still trying to find answers. Like I'm only 1 year in. I'm slowly meeting people that's been dealing with this for like 20 years or 10 to 20 years. And they all pretty much have the same thing. They've all been on meds. And again, I'm trying to stay off of meds as much as possible. But now I'm proud to say like I'm in full-time grad school getting my master's degree. I am an entrepreneur, so I run 2 organizations now. I get to travel the nation, speak to youth. Obviously not right now during quarantine. My best friend and I published a book this past summer, and we're working on the second book and just a few more projects. And on the outside looking in, it's like Jose's doing good, but y'all, it's hard. There's days where me being such a go-getter and ambitious person, I used to beat myself up because I felt like I needed to do stuff every day. But then I learned how to give myself permission and give myself grace. That's been one of the biggest growing moments in this season for me. Is like, Jose, you are not your to-do list. So what you accomplished today doesn't define how successful you were today. And I was the guy in undergrad that filled up my resume, had a full calendar. I was gone from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day out of my dorm because I had to be doing something. I had to be busy. I wore it as a badge of honor. And when this started hitting me and slowing me down, which it has slowed me down drastically now, but it's helped me be more intentional. And if it took this chronic illness, and also honestly, just being vulnerable. I'm not sugarcoating anything. We don't have a script. And honestly, I thought a lot of this chronic illness was punishment. Like, I was like, maybe I didn't take care of myself in undergrad. Maybe I do deserve this. Or just like, I don't know. I just felt like it was just punishment and I had to go through it. And then now I'm just learning that I get to just be a voice for others, especially young men, because young men who deal with chronic illness have the highest suicidal rates in the nation because we feel misunderstood. We don't know how to be vulnerable. We just don't know how to put language to our emotions or our feelings, which is also why I have my sister on here today because, like she said earlier, she knows when I'm going through something. Even if I don't say it, she's like, he's not feeling okay right now. And so she's able to put those words for me and kind of like speak on my behalf because it's hard. But again, this is my first time going public, sharing this. Everyone that reaches out is always, or everyone that finds out for the first time that has watched me grow up, ask the same question. Why do bad things happen to good people? And I still struggle to answer that question. I do. But I think the way I live my life is going to be the answer for everybody. That this health illness is not my identity. It's a limitation. Yes, it is. And there's days where it's going to suck. But it doesn't have to define who I am and what I do. Like, I can still impact people from my own house like we are right now, sharing my story. I can still, like, I wrote a book from my bed, because I was dealing with all the panic. All of these things that it's taught me how to be innovative. And I think talking about innovation, like quarantine season is helping a lot of people be innovative because there's nothing else to do. You're at home. So how can you still continue to produce excellent work during limitations? And so for me, it took chronic illness for my eyes to open up to see that Jose needs to put Jose first. And that was something where I struggled at a lot. And now, and whenever I did try to put myself first, I felt guilty. I felt selfish. But now I'm like, no, if Jose wants to be the best version and provide excellent work, he needs to take care of himself first. The world is still going to keep spinning whether you get out of bed or not. Like, it's okay. And so, amen. Yeah, there's no testimony without a test. That's so good. And that's what I keep telling myself. Like, I'm going to get through this. And I don't like to use the word battling. I like to say conquering. So every day I'm conquering. So as we wrap up, is there anything you want to say? Anything that I missed?
Just basically for those who are watching and those who will be watching, if you know somebody who is dealing with something, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, I always like to include mental too because
it's an invisible illness.
There's a lot of people out there who are struggling mentally, whether that is through depression, struggling with suicidal thoughts, whatever it is, and physical, of course. It's just understanding and being a listening ear. I like to, Jose always says, like, I tend to be more quiet because I tend to observe people and you get to see who people are during that time, but also be that listening ear and try to figure out exactly what exactly do they need. Do they need that space? Do they need maybe just somebody to be there at that moment? What are those areas that you can support that person? Because we do have a lot of people who are struggling with a lot of things. And I think with Jose, like your illness is physical and at the same time it's not physical. So even on top of all of that, being able to try to figure out this new normal, as he said earlier, because our life is forever changed, no matter what, whether you are healed or whether you're not healed, our life is forever changed. And so learning how to work with that and learning how to deal with that and what works best for you is important, especially even now, like during quarantine and like during this virus. Like if you get affected, it would be
you have a compromised immune system.
Yeah, your immune system is not as strong as mine is. So like even for myself, being aware and conscious whenever I go to the store, like what are those actions I am taking, and even after quarantine and after the virus, what actions and what steps are we taking for on behalf of other people, right? So I think that's like my overall thing, is like being aware of what people are going through, and not just being simply there, but being empathetic and understanding that there are a lot of people out there who are struggling with multiple things.
Yeah, she nailed it. So as we wrap up, just definitely want to appreciate everybody. Like I said, this is my first time. Like I've been off social media for a year and a half, and so I haven't shared like my story much with anybody other than those closest to me or those that I've worked with. And so I'm definitely curious, but also nervous to see the response, especially from people that watch me grow up. But to those of you that watch me grow up, and this is your first time hearing this, like I just want to let you know that I'm okay, and I'm learning to be that it's okay to not be okay. That I don't have to be put on the face that I'm strong 24/7. There's hard days that suck. Like yesterday was a pretty rough morning for me, but like I'm okay, and we're gonna get through this. And I definitely like MBK said earlier, there's no testimony without a test. And so let's get through this, y'all. And like you just. Like something that's hit me recently is like give people the roses while they can still smell them. Like I just started doing that recently, giving people the roses while they can still smell them. And I think that's very important, because although, and I did a lot of research because I'm brand new to this chronic illness, one of the biggest things that man, I lost my train of thought. What was it saying? Oh, give people the roses. When I first got diagnosed with this, I thought I was gonna die, y'all. So I was literally on Google every day, double, triple, and I know they say don't trust Google, but just checking, like, can you die from a chronic illness? Can you die from an autoimmune disease? And yes, it's your body attacking itself, but like it takes a lot for someone to die with chronic illness and autoimmune disease, you know. But that was my biggest fear. But it's taught me how to be intentional now. And so my doctor has reiterated, like, no, like people live till 70, 80, you know, for the rest of life. They're in pain, and they deal with chronic fatigue and all of that, and their lives change, but like no one dies. But with that being said, like I said, I've learned how to be more intentional, and I look forward to just posting more on the website, mykeepingon.org. Continue to follow us on Instagram as I continue to share just my journey. Like I said, I'm used to sharing my story after I've conquered something. I've never shared my story in the midst of a battle, but here I am now. I don't have the answers. I'm going through, every day looks different. I have no idea what tomorrow's gonna look like for me. I can wake up in pain tomorrow and I have to cancel all my plans. I can wake up fine and then by noon I'm depleted. Like, you know, I just never know. And so with all that being said, we love you all. We appreciate you all. And just stay tuned. We'll be going live a lot more, especially during quarantine, to just be a voice, but also just help others know that they're not alone in all of this. So thank you all so much. Devin said, but are you baking? My sister, yeah, she just started making cookies and stuff. There's a lot of things we have to remove out of our diet. So like flour and making sure things are gluten just for my sake. But yeah, we're getting creative. Like I said, we're making sweet potato versions of everything that we used to try to eat, and even just try to find alternatives to that. Prince, thank you for joining. Sheena, Devin, MBK, everybody that's on here. We love y'all. Thank y'all so much. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye. Woo!